If the US and China went to war, would there even be a winner?
Diplomatic trouble may be brewing again between China and the United States.
Many people have expressed fears that we are closer to war than we have ever been in decades.
实现祖国完全统一是任何势力都阻挡不了的。
Well, a war between the US and China wouldn't be a fight, it'd be a global catastrophe. Imagine the year is 2027. Tensions between the United States and China have been escalating for months, primarily over territorial disputes in the South China Sea. And one day, a blinding flash rips across the night sky over the South China Sea. Moments later, alarms blare in the Joint Chiefs of Staff War Room in Washington, D.C., and the Central Military Commission headquarters in Beijing. Confusion reigns: a satellite malfunction? A missile strike? Panic hangs heavy as both sides scramble to gather intel. The culprit isn't a missile, but a catastrophic miscalculation. The state-of-the-art AI defense system, affectionately nicknamed Argus by its American developers, misinterprets a routine Chinese naval exercise as a full-blown attack. Within seconds, Argus unleashes a volley of hypersonic interceptors, tearing through the Chinese formation like a pack of hungry wolves. News explodes on social media. Doctored videos fuel nationalistic fervor, painting the attack as either American aggression or a desperate Chinese first strike. Hours tick by, filled with accusations, threats, and a deafening silence from the crippled communication satellites. Meanwhile, on board the crippled Chinese destroyer, Captain swears under his breath. The pride of his fleet, the Dragon's Fury, lies dead in the water, its advanced radar systems fried by the American counterstrike. He knows this was a mistake, a horrifying glitch in a system that shouldn't have fired without human authorization. But in the fog of war, his voice is lost in the rising tide of military action. Stock markets in New York and Shanghai plummet as investors flee in fear. Trading screens turn into a sea of red. Alarms blare on trading floors, and frantic shouts echo through the air. Panic ripples outwards, sending tremors through every sector of the global economy. Supply chains stutter, oil prices spike, and the value of major currencies plummets. Within hours, the world watched in bated breath as the digital storm raged. Chinese hackers infiltrated critical American infrastructure, causing widespread power outages and disrupting financial systems. Financial institutions go dark as hackers target banks and stock exchanges, sowing chaos in global markets. Government-backed trolls amplify nationalistic narratives, twisting the narrative of the attack. Deepfakes of world leaders issuing threats flood the internet, further inflaming tensions. Independent journalists struggle to verify information, but the deafening roar of propaganda drowns out their voices. Hospitals go dark, flights get grounded, and financial transactions grind to a halt. Panic bleeds from the digital realm into the real world. Grocery stores are mobbed as people rush to stockpile essentials, fearing the worst. Meanwhile, in the Pentagon's war room, President Biden slams his fist on the table. "We've lost contact with Argus," he growls, his voice laced with frustration. The AI defense system, once their pride and joy, has gone dark. Was it a Chinese countermeasure, a system failure, or something more sinister? The room hangs heavy with unanswered questions. On the other side of the Pacific, President Xi Jinping paces relentlessly in the sterile confines of the Central Military Commission headquarters. Reports flood in. a downed destroyer, crippled communication satellites, and a global market meltdown. The weight of the situation presses down on him. Was this a deliberate provocation by the Americans? Well, with a stockpile of around 500 nuclear weapons and one of the world's largest navies, backed by over 2 million active personnel, Xi Jinping sees an opportunity to challenge the United States, aiming to seize control of the strategically vital island, Taiwan. Amidst the chaos, both nations scramble to regain control of the situation. Chinese and American diplomats engage in frantic back-channel communications, attempting to diffuse the escalating tensions. Yet, amidst the fog of war and rampant disinformation, trust is in short supply. Naval battles erupt across the South China Sea and the Pacific Ocean as both sides deploy their fleets. The once tranquil waters become a battleground, with missiles streaking across the sky and naval vessels locked in deadly dances of maneuver and countermaneuver. In the Taiwan Strait, Xi activates the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force, PLARF. This group has around 120,000 members and operates 6 known ballistic missile bases in China. But what makes PLARF especially powerful is its massive arsenal of around 4,000 missiles. These missiles can target both ships at sea and stationary land-based targets. The attack begins with a barrage of missiles, supported by air power from upgraded air bases in Longtian, Zhangzhou, and Huyan. China's target is not just Taiwan, but also the U.S. Pacific Fleet, a significant obstacle to Xi's ambitions. This fleet, consisting of around 200 ships, 1,500 aircraft, and 150,000 personnel, covers a vast expanse of the world's oceans, from Antarctica to the Arctic Circle, including the Pacific and Indian Oceans. Xi's goal is to strategically weaken this fleet to hinder America's ability to respond quickly to his actions. He plans a 3-pronged missile attack. First on Xi's hit list are the U.S. Pacific Fleet and the naval bases in Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines. But isn't that like poking a sleeping dragon? Any attack on these nations risks dragging them into the war on America's side. On the other hand, if he doesn't strike now, he leaves 200 bases ready to counterattack, supported by around 79,000 troops. Tough choice, right? But Xi can't let these bases counterattack. President Xi launches a lot of Dongfeng 26, DF-26 missiles towards U.S. bases in Japan and South Korea. These missiles have a long range, over 2,000 miles, so they easily reach their targets. He also uses shorter-range missiles like the DF-16. Next, Xi targets bases closer to the United States. He sends more missiles toward Guam and Hawaii. The DF-27, a hypersonic missile, is his secret weapon. It can evade U.S. missile defenses and reach the American mainland. Lastly, he's targeting American ships in the Pacific. With 9 cruisers and a fleet of destroyers in his sights, Xi aims to eliminate or heavily damage them, clearing the path for his invasion of Taiwan and beyond. But will they hit their targets? And even if they do, can he handle the consequences?
The U.S. and its partners lose very heavily, but so do the Chinese, enough so that the grip of the Chinese Communist Party might be endangered.
如果要打的话是要奉陪的，而且是可以作战到底的，可以血战到底的等等。
这是我们战争的底线，精准、及时、管够。
Here's where it gets interesting. Despite Xi's cyber attacks, the U.S. missile defense systems remain operational. The DSP satellites, managed by the Space Force, detect China's missile launches. This gives President Biden time to prepare the country's defenses. But wait, what if any of these missiles contain nuclear warheads? It's a terrifying thought. Biden consults his advisors, but they conclude it's unlikely. Still, the U.S. has to rely on its missile defense systems while bracing for the worst. Troops in the potential strike zones evacuate, and defenses are on high alert. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, Xi waits as his missiles head towards Japan and South Korea. Both countries have activated their missile defense systems. Some missiles are destroyed, but many get through. Okinawa suffers the worst. As a key American military hub in Japan, it's a prime target. At the Kadena Air Base, missiles rain down on F-15 Eagle fighters, E-3 Sentry planes, and KC-135 Strato tankers. The latter are especially important targets. They'll limit America's ability to refuel its aircraft in the air, restricting them to using the bases that China is so steadfastly attacking. The strike seems like a success, with thousands of American troops possibly killed in the process. But Xi knows those bases aren't completely out of commission. So what's his plan? He can't launch a ground-based invasion just yet. This means the surviving crews at these bases will be able to rebuild quickly enough to continue to serve as launching points for the U.S. Air Force. Xi's okay with that. He only needs them down for a few days. Imagine the tension as China's missiles draw nearer to Hawaii. Dozens are shot down, but many more break through, striking ships like the USS Frank E. Peterson and USS Hopper. By the end of the first few hours of the conflict, China has expended nearly a quarter of its 4,000 missiles. Devastation reigns on the American bases in Asia, but at the cost of drawing Japan and South Korea into Xi's war. America's Pacific Fleet is severely weakened, with cyber attacks limiting the speed of the U.S. response. Yet, the strike's success wasn't total, but it was enough. Day 2 arrives, and Xi Jinping must be feeling pretty smug, right? He's knocked America off balance, and now he's ready to focus on Taiwan. But Taiwan isn't just sitting around waiting to get hit. They've got some tricks up their sleeves. Xi spends a whole day chucking missiles at Taiwan, hoping to soften them up. But Taiwan isn't just taking it lying down. They've got the US-made Patriot air defense system and their own Skybow missile defenses. Xi wants to send in ground troops, but he doesn't want to bomb his own people accidentally. Tsai Ing-wen, Taiwan's president, is playing a clever game. She knows where Xi is likely to strike. She's fortified cliffs on the east and ports and beaches on the west. It's not going to be easy for Xi to invade. Those beaches? Yeah, they're more like obstacle courses with mines, barbed wire, and anti-landing spikes. Now, Xi might have thought he had the upper hand, but here comes day 3, and Biden's playing a whole different game. He's hitting China where it hurts, its economy. With heavy sanctions and a trade blockade, Xi's running out of options. China's in trouble when it comes to oil. It imports a massive 11.8 million barrels of oil per day to keep itself running. Much of that oil comes from Russia, which is now responsible for about 19% of the oil China buys annually. However, the other 81% comes from countries like Saudi Arabia, which are allied to the United States. Yes, Russia will still supply Xi, but it isn't able to cover the massive shortfall that results from America's sanctions. And Putin can't risk Russia's trade with other countries just to support China, especially when facing his own sanctions. Xi didn't expect this. Now, he faces a countdown. China has to defeat the United States in a matter of months, or else its resources will dwindle to the point where it's practically starved out of the fight that it started. With sanctions in place and trade routes being cut off, Biden turns to NATO for support. China's direct attack on America, launching missiles at Hawaii and American-owned military bases, triggers Article 5 of the NATO Charter, bringing most of Europe into the fold. Cooperating with NATO, Biden prepares to utilize the power of 31 nations, including what's left of the U.S. defenses. The focal point of the counterattack is the Taiwan Strait, where Xi's attempts to take Taiwan. Now he's facing an extended conflict, losing thousands of troops every day in his attempts to land on Taiwanese beaches. It's not looking good for him, but Biden's got a plan. He's combining America's naval resources with those of its NATO allies, South Korea, Japan, and Australia. Even Canada pitches in. South Korea hesitates, wary of North Korea, but lends its support by keeping an eye on its northern neighbor. Weeks pass, and Xi's forces are still stuck on Taiwan shores. Every attempt to break through is met with fierce resistance. The U.S. and its allies, with their overwhelming naval and air power, push China back. Xi's dream of taking Taiwan fades. His navy lies in tatters, and he faces a tough choice: nuclear war or surrender. Wisely, he chooses the latter. America wins the war, but victory comes at a cost. Cities lie in ruins, economies are shattered, and countless lives are lost. The international community rallies together to provide aid and support to those affected by the conflict, but the scars of war will take years to heal. Yet, this victory sends a strong message to the world. It shows the power of cooperation against a common enemy. But hey, this is just one scenario. What do you think? Could China have done things differently? Will the U.S. always receive such strong support from its allies? And most importantly, what role should AEI and autonomous systems play in military decision-making? And how can we ensure that human oversight remains paramount? Share your thoughts in the comments, and to watch the latest geopolitical news, watch this video here.